All right, welcome.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Title, we're going to go ahead and jump right into today on how it took me just right at or roughly around 42 months to become a millionaire. So, everyone who's coming on here, go ahead and as you're showing up. And then also would enjoy hearing from you as well. So just go ahead and comment below, literally with just anything. I will personally respond to you. It also helps for the YouTube algorithm too. So have to be transparent on that. So one thing that I do want to mention throughout this is that this is by no means me bragging or anything of that. It's just sharing my own experience on how I was able to accomplish this. And you'll also see that I've had humble beginnings from where I ended up coming from to get to this point where I'm at now. And of course, there's still so much more to go, but just going to be sharing the story. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and hop into this here and into the first point. So when I found out, and let me go ahead and make sure that this is actually live on YouTube. Sometimes it doesn't actually go all the way through, so give me a second. All right. So the last thing I would want to do is actually play this all the way, and it's actually not working. That would not be good. All right, so here we go here. And just testing this. All right, so we're good. And so, yeah, to go into when I found out there was a point in time where my lender asked me, and this was about the 42 month mark, that the lender that I was using to, not the lender that was providing the financing on the deals asked for my PFS, which the PFS is your personal financial statement. So they asked for the personal financial statement. And it was at this point in time where I had owned 150 single families, a company that was doing well on the revenue side, and then also 4 apartment buildings, being a 46 unit, being a 50 unit, being 2 separate 80 unit apartment complexes. And then once it was broken down, it was from that point where my net worth was over $1 million. And that's when, at that point in time, where I said, okay, well, cool. All right. I've been able to reach this milestone that I never thought as myself growing up in Section 8 housing, single mother, fraternal twin brother, almost lost my life at 6 years old due to a stray bullet just going right through the back patio, and almost hit me, and almost either was going to hit my brother too. But that statistically is one, I actually should not have made it past the age of actually 18 years old. So let alone actually becoming and hitting that millionaire status. So that's just one thing is that I wanted to share with anyone on here. If I can come from a background such as that, which, as I mentioned, is just living on welfare, Section 8 housing, just shows you what's possible. And through the course of this is I'm actually going to share each of those lessons that enabled me to get to that place where I didn't even think was possible, because the only I wouldn't say objective, is I didn't even know if I was going to see it past the age of actually 18 years old. So I remember there was one point in time I was actually playing basketball with a friend of mine, and then the very next day, as they were gone, because they actually attempted to rob the pizza man in the apartments next door, and the pizza man was packing heat, ended up taking their life. So that was just one of those things. I knew that I did not want to go down that path. And then also is the common path that is go to work, get a 9 to 5, go up the corporate ladder. Is I just knew that was not going to get me to that status either. And then also I want to allude to is, yes, when I looked at my personal financial statement and I saw that my net worth at that point in time was over $1 million, I looked at it And I believe for a couple quick seconds or maybe a minute or so, I was like, oh, I reached, now I'm officially a millionaire. But it was one of those things that, okay, cool. What's bigger than that? What's the next thing? And yeah, that's cool that to be able to reach that. But okay, what more impact can I actually make? Can I actually impact in the world? So I'm going to go ahead and go into the just share the story on how I was able to get to that point. So let's take a trip down memory lane. All right. So yeah, there's as mentioned, anyone's currently on here live, go ahead and comment below. Really enjoy hearing from you. Right now, we've just got a little bit of crickets that are going on because I know there's some people that are shy while we're on here live. Just comment, let me know where you're from. I'm here in Houston, Texas, the 713. And then also within the questions as well, because at the end I do go into some questions. But yeah, I want to go ahead, get you guys the content, get out, because I know that's what most of you want to come here for. Okay, what's the story? Get to the meat and potatoes. So the first, the next step that I ended up taking was I made a decision. So the initially, and this was when I was 22, 23 years old, is the decision wasn't made to actually become a millionaire. It was more of just to grow a portfolio to have financial freedom. And I knew that real estate was going to be that actual vehicle. And I knew that at that point in time that yes, real estate was going to be the vehicle, but now I need to create enough value to where I can have that financial freedom. And this is one thing I've learned from Earl Nightingale, that the people that you see that are out there highly successful, or whatever you would classify as highly successful in achieving, is they are bringing value to the marketplace, and your compensation from that is many of the times in direct correlation for the value that you bring to the value place. Of course, you have some anomaly cases that don't bring as much value in that case, but majority of the time, someone is creating a lot of value in order to get that compensation that they're getting, the problems that they're solving in order to get to that. And so is I took a step back when I was 23, and this was right around the time where I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you haven't read that book, a fantastic way, especially as a way to end up getting started in the real estate industry and just having that business knowledge overall. So I took a step back at my current situation. I said that, hey, I want to be financially free, and I want to do that vehicle through real estate. Okay, now how do I do that? Okay, I've got to start to buy deals. But one is assessing my current situation. I'm broke. Actually had negative funds in my bank account because I was just not being financially smart, giving myself a and also I was not as knowledgeable on real estate. And then in addition to that, I had a lot of limiting beliefs. But I knew that it was just my job to end up problem solving to figure out a way to bridge that gap from my current situation to that end goal that I wanted to get to, which was just simply by solving problems. And that's what I've learned, is life is just about solving problems and being problem solvers. And so I just essentially had to fill in the weaknesses that I ended up having. And that very first deal that I ended up acquiring, and this is how I was able to now get my foot in the door and really just open my eyes, is that I ended up partnering with my mentor, who brought the cash, as well as to fund the purchase price, and then also to fund the rehab as well. And then from there, as I got thrown into the fire to figure everything else out. But then I started seeing those checks come in, and I didn't actually have to go to work to now exchange my time in order to get that income coming in. And that's when the light bulb really just went off for me at that point in time. And I knew that this is where I actually want to be. And then shortly after that, I ended up buying a single family house that was right across the street. And it really just started snowballing after that. So that's initially how I ended up starting in. But it all came down to just making a decision. So let's go ahead and shift over to a couple chats that we have here quickly. There we go. Appreciate everyone. All right, so we got Charlie Williams from You Live DOC. All right, my man Brandon, great to see you from Milwaukee. Jeff Ricks from Indy. All right, my hometown, the 317. All right, Lance Phillips from Colorado Springs. All right, we got another from Indianapolis. Great to see you, Alexa. And then also Jay Prince. Appreciate the content, man. I appreciate you for being on here. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the next point that I want to get to here. And be sure that I have everyone's attention. You've got no distractions that's going on in the background, and you all know what distractions that I'm actually talking about. There we go. Okay, all right. So the next that we have here is build, sacrifice, and then scale. So at the first initial, I would say the 3.5 years, so those 42 months that I had mentioned to you, it was all a complete blur, especially when I think back on that, because it was just sacrificing day in and day out, really just planting the seeds for the future. And that very first year was very tough. And it was a lot of startup mode. And this was at the point in time where I ended up shifting from my mentorship that I had, bought several properties. And then after that, I started a company with my business partner, Jacob, which was Holdfolio. And that's when we were doing the crowdfunding route. And that first year is we bought, I would say, just a handful of properties, 4 or 5 properties, and we were using private money, so friends and families cash at that point. And how we were using that, and what we would do is we would buy single families with friends and family, and then we would renovate those. Let me go ahead and take this off here. We would renovate those properties, and then we would go out and then snowball and do the snowball effect. And so we would use our friend and family cash to buy the 10 single families, renovate them, and then stabilize them so there's income coming in from the rent, so all 10 of those. And then through outside investors, we would in essence do the BRRRR method, but through, instead of a bank, is we would use outside investors, cash our original investors out, and then new investors would come in, and then they would get a return from the cash flow of the properties, and then we would do it all over again with our friends and families money, which was the private money side of things. And from that, that's how we were able to scale so quickly. But it came down to, it was a snowball effect, because that first year is we didn't have a name. We were just building and really planting the seeds at that point. And so we bought several single families, and then once we got 10, and then they were at that point stabilized, then it took a while to cash our original investors out, because at that time I was on the site biggerpockets.com. If you're not on biggerpockets.com, you've got to go on there. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get a kickback for you signing up for a free account. Great resource to use starting out. And so I was on there pushing out content to everyone, and from that is started to build a brand from that to bring on the investor side. And when raising money for that initial portfolio, it took longer than expected. Thought it was going to take a couple months, but no, it ended up taking much longer than that. But then started to gain traction. So one, did that very first portfolio, 10 single family homes, then went and did another one. So went and did another one, and then that's when it started snowballing from that point in time. And then fast forward, this was close to about 3 years, the 3-year mark, that was just over 100 single families. And from that experience is that now took the time at that moment and said, okay, well, now how do we scale even more? And started looking at, because when you've got that many single families, it is quite a bit to manage. I'll tell you, is one, the amount of transactions that you have to go through, and then because many of these transactions were not packages of actual deals, it was more so. Yeah, it was more of one-off type deals, and maybe if we were lucky we get a package of 2, maybe a package of 3. But then in order to get to that 100 or so single families at that point in time, had to look at thousands of properties, and I mean thousands of different properties. So it was very management intensive, because was managing our my own properties at that point, our own properties at that point. And then also is the scalability was very difficult. So it was in Indianapolis as well as Dayton, Ohio. OH, for those of you who know that. So yeah, OH, and then you would say IO. So is then took a step back and said, okay, what model is more scalable? And then it made the most sense at that point in time to start to shift to multifamily. And now you may ask the question is, how did you make that shift to multifamily? But that's a whole nother question in itself, and I'll answer questions towards the end. So decision was made to now shift to multifamily, and then that very first deal that was acquired was a 46 unit, where it was a $900,000 was the purchase price. $200,000 was needed to put down towards it, and then additional money was raised from investors for the renovations of that property. And then what I want to say is, on each and every one of these deals, the 100 or so single families, and then now this 46 unit apartment complex, is I had a ownership in each and every one of those, to where I would get I had a piece of the equity, and each of those equity splits that I had was directly tied to my net worth. So it was one of those things that it was just steadily building to that point. And I was just solely focused on that, because what I've learned is that the most rich and wealthy people that are out there is they've got some form of real estate that's in their portfolio, and real estate is indestructible. So it's just one of those things that's just going to last and weather the storm. And yes, there are some dips that do happen in the industry, but if you look at, I was actually reading this book by Dr. J. It's a great autobiography, and he was talking about the houses that he was buying at that time. And it's interesting, the value of those houses and the value of those houses today. It really just goes to show you, one, inflation. But if you just look at the prices of property now, it's just, yes, it goes in the dips, but overall it's up into the right. So yeah, is one, bought that 46 unit and used and did a syndication that way. And then right after that did a 50 unit deal. And all of this was using the direct to owner approach. And so as mentioned, fast forwarding to that 3.5 year mark, is lender asked for the personal financial statement, and just through all that building that I had alluded to you, and just making that sacrifice and just planting those seeds. And I knew that through the course of all this is it takes a team effort. I did not do any of this by myself, as I understood what my strengths were and then also my weaknesses. So that's first and foremost, and built people around me for that, and also complementing their weaknesses with my strengths. Secondly is patience. I see time and time again the investors that I work with I help them get to their first goal, or even transition from single family to multifamily, is lack of impatience. It just takes time to get to the point where I was being a millionaire at that, and woo, when it comes to that. I just realized hey, if I plant the seeds now, is that yes, I may not see those sprout at this moment, but if I keep planting them, at some point in the future, it will happen. And there's this quote out there that says that people, overestimate what they can do in a year. I believe that's what they say. Yeah, overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a 10-year span. So from that is that 3.5 years it took me to get to that millionaire status, is that that took that 3.5 year mark. But I was working, I would say, anywhere between 70 to 80 hours in order to get to that. And I'm sure there could have been ways I could have worked smarter on that, but still ended up figuring it out. So that's what I have for you all. Is one, that those were the steps I ended up taking to get to that status that I had. Is one, humble beginnings, that where I ended up coming from. So Section 8 housing, statistically, I actually should not be in this chair, actually sharing this experience with you. Actually should not have lived past the age of 18. The second is I made the decision that one, I wanted to be financially free, and real estate was going to be that vehicle. And it just happened to I wouldn't even say serendipitously, but the byproduct of that was being able to scale a portfolio that I had enough ownership within the company in that portfolio to then have the net worth over $1 million. And so there's that. And then the next is just building people around me, because it's definitely a team effort, and then having a more scalable model, because started with single family and then made the pivot to multifamily, and then that having ownership within those larger deals. So the most recent deal that I'm actually selling now for bought it 2 years ago. This is Remington on Rockville. So let me show you what I was going to show it to you, but bought it. This was for just over $6 million 2 years ago, and now selling it for $10.9 million several years later, and have put over $2 million into that particular property. So I have ownership within that particular deal as well, that ties to the net worth side of things. So all in all, I want to show you all what is possible that's out there, because one, I don't have all the answers, as Kanye West would say to Sway. But what I did figure out is just going out there and then putting in the work, and then surrounding yourself with the right people, and then having that end goal, and just having faith that you'll be able to get to that end goal as long as you keep constantly putting in the work. So, all right, that's what we have on that. Going to go ahead and queue up some questions here that you have. And all right, so let's go ahead and get into these. Let's get ready for the next question. And there's always room for improvement. I'm always looking for ways to get better.
Another one.
All right, so let's go to these questions that we have here. All right, so by Jeff Ricks, what was mentor percentage in first deal? So he had 90%, and I had the remaining 10%, and that was strictly sweat equity that I had for that 10%, and he had the 90% for bringing the cash. So the purchase price as well as the rehab, and then in addition to that is we were able to use his maintenance team to perform the construction on it. I just had to oversee the transaction with the title company, and then also oversee the leasing process. So many mistakes that was made on that deal. I ended up leasing it when it was 70% 70% ready, and it was difficult to lease that. And I wonder why it was difficult to lease it, because people could not see the vision, see the vision in the end product. All right. And here we go. So we got Conway Lightborn that says best place to invest in multifamily now. This comes down to your own investment philosophy, because each market offers something different. Are you going for more cash flow? Are you going for more appreciation? Are you looking to try and get the best of both worlds when it comes to cash flow and getting those yields in the appreciation side? So that then when you have that, you can reverse engineer. So I'm more of a yields where I can get a good cash flow and a good return from that, and cash on cash. So I like to look more in the Midwest, being Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, also in Louisville, or Louisville, however you would pronounce that. In markets within Kentucky, and then markets within St. Louis. All right, great to see you, as mentioned. Okay, all right, and my man Buck, always great to see you, Christopher. All right, so 70, 80 hours, what was your strength to deals? Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? You may be referencing strengths and weaknesses. I would say as far as strengths and weaknesses, is strengths that I have is one, on the acquisition side, I'm not afraid to go pick up the phone, and then be more aggressive when following up with people. I'm not afraid to get kicked in the face. I don't like getting kicked in the face, but it's one of those things. I'm not afraid of rejection. Some people are a little bit more hesitant on calling complete strangers, so that's what I would say a strength. Two is, gosh, is my ability to just simply figure things out, to where just taking action with speed. And that's a double-edged sword at times, though. Is what I mean by that is, I know that, let's say that 46 unit deal that I ended up acquiring on the multifamily side, is that was going through brokers. That was not working. Okay, let's take the direct to owner approach. Okay, let me start calling these owners as the channel that I want to use. And I was doing the driving for dollars, is that I was just taking action. But then there's sometimes where I need to just take a step back and strategically think about things, and then lay down more of a foundation. That way I can build on top of that, meaning putting more of the right processes and systems in place. That way I don't have to work as hard and could potentially burn myself out from that. So that's what I would say, is that I'm more of an action taker. And if there's a brick wall in front of me, I'll figure out a way. I'll run into the wall, and then at some point I'll run through the wall, as what Juggernaut would do. Give myself the buzzer on that. Is where, and eventually get through the wall. But there's times where I could just take a step back and strategically think, okay, maybe I could build a ladder to go above the wall, or I could do something to go around the wall. So that's what I would want say. And then also underwriting is another thing. I'm not so good when it comes to that, and put people in place, and then managing people. So it's just being aware of those certain things, and then building up on my strengths, and then putting people around me on the weaknesses, and then in hopes that, I wouldn't say in hopes, but also you'll be able to go that much further if you also complement that other person's what do you call that, weaknesses with your strengths. And yes, on Rockville Road, yes, in Indy. So Rockville, right before you get to Avon. So Rockville and Girls School. So Remington or Rockville. Actually, it's under contract at this moment in time, and it was set to close June 24th, but waiting for the buyers, waiting for inspection reports, as well as financing. So we'll have to see. Expected to close the end of this month. So last question that we have here: do you believe purchasing right now would be buying at the top of the market? Yes, I do. And I'm trying to think of any other way. Yeah, you at buying right now, so the deal that I bought, just the deal that I sold right before this, which was the 80 unit in Indianapolis, is I have no clue how that buyer was able to make the number. Whoa. All right. It looks like power almost went out. I have no idea how the buyer was able to make the numbers work on that, as an example. So we'll have to see how that ends up working out on that particular deal. I believe most of these, I wouldn't say most, but some of these deals that have been bought over the most recent years, if we do end up having a dip that happened, if they're not able to weather the storm through that, those deals will start to come up. So that's just my personal opinion when it comes to that, Alexa. But yeah, we're definitely, I would say we're buying at the top. But then, of course, over the course, if you look at it, you zoom out, then no, you wouldn't be buying at the top, because overall, especially due to inflation, real estate goes up and to the right. So long term, big picture, no, you wouldn't be purchasing at the top. If that makes sense. And that's me pulling from both ends when it comes to that. So all right. And yes, glad you got that, Jeff. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you all so much. I will see you on the next week or tomorrow, or yes, I appreciate you. Keep being awesome. And as mentioned, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps for the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you guys. Peace.